All right, class, let's do chapter 5. Here we go. Business 132, chapter 5. That's me, Dusair. We're going to talk a little bit more about business ethics, and it's kind of the overarching theme of the class, but we're going to kind of dig into business ethics here. Some of it might be slightly repetitive, but we're going to do it. So here's some different kind of definitions of business ethics. I kind of like the top one the best, but we'll go over all these definitions and or just overarching thoughts of what business ethics, what that really is. Business ethics is concerned with the rightness, fairness, or justice of actions, decisions, policies, and practices that take place within a business context or in the workplace. All things right or wrong, essentially, that happen within business. Second one, business ethics is often seen as a set of principles or code of conduct by which activities are judged to be appropriate or questionable. Just kind of, piggybacking and another layer of the first bullet point there. Third one, business ethics is a field of study in which the practices in organizations are analyzed to determine whether they are acceptable or not. Are you doing right or not? Are you just or not? Are you doing essentially the right thing? And then the fourth one is business ethics is also a field of study and topic that is of interest to the public because we all have a vested interest in what businesses are doing. Vested a topic that is of interest to the public, academics, students, and managers. Many stakeholders, we went over stakeholders previously, have as much as at stake in issues of business ethics. This is very interesting. This is a Venn model. If you're familiar with Venn models, this is a Venn model. The ethical dilemmas. So you have the gray area, which is ethical responsibilities, the gold or yellow area of ethical economic responsibilities, and then you have the legal responsibilities in the red. These are all areas that managers and businesses must take into consideration. So let's look at area 3 first, which is kind of that area between the ethical responsibilities and legal responsibilities. Area 3 is legal and ethical, but not always profitable. So a business can do something that's legal, do something that's ethical, but is it going to make the company money, which is the point of business? Probably not, right? Area 2A, which is that kind of in the bottom there by the gold and in the red or maroon, very USC-ish colors. Profitable and legal, but proceed cautiously. Okay, why would you proceed cautiously? It might not be ethical, right? Because it has nothing to do. It's not even touching upon the anything that's ethical. Area 2B, profitable and ethical, but probably legally too. But you're not. Could be, since it's so disconnected or removed from the legal responsibility, there might be some legal problems, legal implications there. The sweet spot is area 1. It's profitable, it's legal, and it's ethical. That's how you have to kind of that decision making, that decision tree should be right there. There's something that is ethical, responsible. It's ethical, legal, and has and you're gonna make money out of it. Sure. I gotta do it like this. So there's 3 so you have to think about the type of the managers and what management's role in ethics are. There's 3 different models of management and ethics: immoral management, moral management, and amoral management. Immoral management, that essentially is just the approach that is devoid, doesn't have anything, is just removed from ethical principles. It also implies a positive and active opposition to what is ethical. This is do whatever it takes to make money. You don't care about the ethical responsibilities, the legal responsibilities. It's essentially it's immoral management. These decisions and actions and practices are distant from ethical norms and principles. Managed motives are selfish, and it cares only or primarily about its own organization's gains. How can we make this company money? And not conversely, but directly, how does that relate to money in our pockets? A good example is a company called Enron. I think the name of the documentary is the smartest guys in the room, or smartest men in the room. Enron was one of the biggest companies, publicly traded companies out there. Their stock was booming, but it was all a scam. These guys were just Ken Lay and Jeff Skilling were solely obsessed on getting that stock price high totally dominated an industry, even if they were cooking the books, even if all the financials were totally bogus. They had even were engaged in just some kind of just fear tactics in the state of California. Ended up getting Gray Davis out of office as the governor. And it's a reason that Arnold Schwarzenegger became our governor, is because they scared everybody in thinking that the whole state was going to go dark because we didn't have enough energy. So it's a really kind of frightening, but really good documentary. The smartest guys in the room or smartest men in the room. It's just, if you look it up, it's just Enron. If this was a class in person, we absolutely watch that that video at some point. So that's immoral management. Moral management is just basically conforming to the highest standards of ethical behavior or professional standards of conduct. A good example of that would be like CVS. CVS just made the decision because they are, a drugstore, and they're basically, essentially there to provide medication, and you're supposed to go into a CVS in theory, along with getting an ice cream and soda and all that kind of stuff, is you go there to get medication. You go there, you have a headache, you go there to get, you have, a sore shoulder, you get like, the little ice packs. But also what they did for, they sold cigarettes. And CVS made the decision that, this is not consistent with what we want to be known as. CVS basically stopped selling cigarettes. $2 billion of revenue that they basically just kind of said, you know what, it's more important to us to be moral in this situation. So CVS made the tough decision. Said cigarettes, tobacco products, we are not going to sell them anymore because that's not consistent with what we want to be as a company. So that's absolutely moral management. And then what do moral leaders have? What are those kind of commonalities, or not commonalities, but what do they strive for? Well, here are the 7 habits of moral leaders. 1, they have passion to do right. They do right just because it's right. They are morally proactive, which would be like a CVS type of situation. They consider all the stakeholders. Remember, we talked about the stakeholders a lot, about stakeholders, not just somebody who owns stock in the company. It's their employees, it's your suppliers, it's the people in your community. Moral leaders, they are morally proactive, and they do consider all those stakeholders. 4, they have strong ethical behavior, probably in and out of work. They want to do the right thing. 5, they have an obsession with fairness, which is great. 6, they undertake principled decision making. It's not just a decision purely economical. It's not that just purely economical. They're also thinking not just everything here in the economical, the gold section, is this ethical, and what's our legal responsibility? And then 7, they integrate ethics, wisdom, and with management wisdom. So they have the kind of like, okay, what is from just kind of a wisdom standpoint, what is ethical, and how does that interact with our overall management philosophies, principles, and decision making. Then there's amoral management. They kind of just think of sometimes themselves as the middle person between immoral and moral management, and it's just it's just business. They just kind of take themselves out of it. They kind of are just emotionally get removed. So there's intentional amoral management, managers that think that different rules apply to business than other realms of life. It's just business. It really bothers me. It's like sometimes you have people who are one way in business, and then they're a different way, like in their personal life. But the people that you really want to do, and some people say, hey, business is business. You gotta make sure that you win in business. For a deal to be good in business, it has to be good for both parties, not just these win it all type of people. And you see that a lot with people. It's like, that they can be one way in business and one way in their personal life. But I think it's just kind of amoral behavior. But the intentional immoral in management, managers think that different rules apply to business than other realms of life. Then there's the unintentional amoral management. Managers are casual, careless, or indifferent to the fact that their decisions and actions may have a negative effect on others. They have no real moral sense. Example, Wells Fargo. They, a while ago, probably about 10 years ago, they wanted to have some like goal setting plans in place for their employees, to sell different credit cards, different services. But unintentionally, that kind of led to and they just kind of stayed out of it. Management, they made these decisions, and they knew that was going to be the best for the company. And you know what? It could have been good for their employees as well. But that led to high pressure sales tactics in this ultra competitive environment where customers ended up saying, it's like, I got this credit card I didn't even sign up for. It was because the employees there felt like they had to give more products and more services to people. And they created this ultra competitive environment. And in the end, they forgot, they kept their eye off the ball of our customers, are the customers, instead of not just us and our profitability. There's a psychologist by the name of Lawrence Kohlberg. He basically did a pretty extensive research or study into the topics of moral development. We'll kind of get into that in a little bit more depth here in a second. But what he concluded is that on the basis of more than 20 years of research, there's a general sequence of 3 levels which individuals progress in learning to think or develop morally. And to kind of think about this, and this is definitely directly connected to management decisions and corporations as well. So there's level 1, the pre-conventional level, how people behave as infants and children. The focus is mainly on you, on the self. I'm very, very, very kind of narrow-minded. So stage 1 is that reaction to punishment stage. That's the child orientation at this stage, is the avoidance of pain. You just don't want to get hurt. You want, and sometimes you don't even know that you do not know the difference between right and wrong. You're just your goal is to avoid pain, essentially. This is in level 1. And then in level 1, you have 2 stages. And then in stage 2, the seeking of reward stage. My wife is a kindergarten and a TK teacher, and they don't know the difference between right and wrong. You have to basically have incentives and rewards for them. If you do something right, here's what you get. You get, a little, bag of, gummy bears or whatever it is. Or you get your little cookies and graham crackers and that kind of stuff. We go through all that. Children don't really understand the difference between right and wrong, but behave according to consequence, punishments, or rewards. It's exactly what my wife Julia does every day with their kids, trying to instill, maybe that by doing enough of a rewards plan, that will end up leading them down the road of what is right and wrong. Level 2 is a conventional level. And there's 2 more stages in that. So that's basically that level where the individual learns the importance of conforming to the conventional norms of the group or society. This is a level at which social relationships form and become dominant. You start becoming, part of a social group. Stage 3 is that good boy, nice girl morality stage. Individuals begin to conform to what is generally accepted of a good child, sibling, friend, and so on. You do good because you want to do good, right? Then there's stage 4, the law and order morality stage. The individual now recognizes that there are certain norms in society that are needed if society is to function in an orderly fashion. You can't just go to the front of the line. You got to get in line. You can't just, they're not at that point yet. You can't just run red lights. You have to just basically conform within society. Then there's a level 3. There's the last 2 stages here, that post-conventional autonomous or principled level. This is the level at which moral principles become self-accepted, not because they are held by society, but because the individual now perceives and embraces them as right. This is like, kind of where people start, because, we have rules obviously in society, but then you have people who protest, like, this might be the rule, but I'm uncomfortable with this. I don't agree with what the norms are. So stage 5 is a social contract orientation. There's a wide social contract that we all basically kind of, go by with, living our lives. At this stage, right action is thought of in terms of general individual rights and standards that have been critically examined and agreed on by society as a whole at stage 5. And then stage 6 is the universal ethics principle orientation, essentially the golden rule. The golden rule: fairness, rights, justice, human rights, reciprocity, and social welfare. Just do the right thing, essentially. So the elements of moral judgment. 6 big elements of moral judgment. Powers and Vogel, some more experts in this field. By the way, the Easter egg for today is Hawaii. I was married in Hawaii. My wife and I got married in Hawaii, specifically Maui, but we'll just leave it with Hawaii. So the Easter egg is Hawaii. Powers and Vogel, more experts in this field, they've suggested that there are 6 major elements or capacities that are essential to making moral judgments. These are the 6, and we'll get in, dig a little bit into these in here in a second. One, it's really, one, moral imaginations. 2, moral identification and ordering. 3, moral evaluations. 4, tolerance of moral disagreement and ambiguity. 5, integration of managerial and moral competence. And 6, a sense of moral obligation. So it's the first one, moral imagination. What is that? That essentially, that's the ability to perceive that a web of competing economic relationships is at the same time a web of moral or ethical relationships. There's a lot going on there, and how you're going to navigate your way between what's right and wrong. Not only becoming sensitive to ethical issues in business decision making, but also developing the perspective of searching out subtle places where people are likely to be harmfully affected by adverse decision making or behaviors of managers. Find out, okay, you have the best intentions sometimes as managers, but also find out, okay, where are those blind spots? Where are those blind spots that maybe those unintended consequences, essentially? So imagine morally where people can be left behind, where people can be disenfranchised, and try to figure out the best way to take care of those people, those groups, those stakeholders. Second one is moral identification and ordering. This essentially is the ability to discern the relevance or non-relevance of moral factors that are introduced into a decision-making situation. So all those pieces, all those elements that basically go into making that decision making, we'll put them in an orderly fashion, kind of like a checklist, essentially. So once moral issues have been identified, they must be ranked or ordered just as economic or technological issues are prioritized during the decision-making process. What is the most important to people? What are kind of, once again, kind of going back to this one. Is that right? Hold on. Oh, shoot, I'm going the wrong way. Similar to the moral imaginations, kind of figuring out where those blind spots were. And a manager must not only develop this skill through experience, but also finally hone it through repetition and the application of ethics principles. So it's like, I've owned businesses in the past, and sometimes you have the best ideas, or an employee will come to you with, I got this idea, we do this, and from experience, well, we did that before, we had a big sales contest, but you know what happens? The same people always win, and then everybody else gets kind of upset. So let's try to, maybe we try to, work around that and do a different type of sales contest where every time you sell something, you put your name into a hat, and then that's could potentially be more fair. Or instead of big sales contest, what I would do, for just, you have one winner and then a bunch of people who don't win, just give everybody an individual goal, and then if they hit that, then they basically they get a reward. The third one is the moral evaluation. This is the practical decision phase of moral judgment. Entails the essential skills such as coherence and consistency that have proved to be effective principles in other contexts. This is when managers is very, very important. They need to understand the importance of the principles of what is important for the company, what is important for you, what is important for your stakeholders, and just kind of really sit back and evaluate that. You need to process that. You need to weigh the ethical factors, develop the ability to identify what the likely moral as well as economic outcomes the decisions will be. So you're putting this together and saying, okay, we've got this decision, we're going to do this project or this initiative. What is this going to yield us? What is this going to yield us from an economic standpoint, from a moral standpoint as well? And is this going to be something that's consistent with what we want to do and what we want to be as a corporation or business? The tolerance of moral disagreement and ambiguity. That's essentially just the ability to hear, discuss, and be respectful towards other people's views. So we put together an initiative, we put together an idea, and then this is essentially the pushback you might get. And how important is that pushback with what you want to do moving forward? Then there's the integration of managerial and moral competence. Moral competence is that very important part of managerial competence. You could have the best, the smartest manager in the world, but if you don't think they're morally competent, would you want to follow them? Would you want them to lead you? If their intentions are just solely focused on results, bottom line, but you morally, it's like, I don't know where this guy is. You have to be able to trust essentially your manager to do the right thing. That's kind of what this is about. There's a significant price to pay for amorality. So when you're kind of acting amorally, people don't want to follow you. An amoral manager sees ethical decisions as isolated and independent of managerial decisions and competence, but the moral manager sees every evolving decision as one in which an ethical perspective must be integrated. There must be ethics in every single decision moving forward. And then there's that sense of moral obligation. This is kind of can be challenging, of having that kind of that sixth sense of knowing when to consider things and knowing what people might what is important to people. So developing a sense of moral obligation. It's an intuitive or learned understanding that those moral threads, a concern for fairness and justice and due process to people, groups, and communities are woven into the fabric of managerial decision making and are the integral, important components that hold systems together. When you have that moral obligation, that holds systems together. That's that trust, right? A sense of moral obligation is what holds society and the business system together as an ethical and sustainable enterprise. Once again, it's that trust, that moral obligation. It's like, if you don't have that overall trust of an organization, of a manager, you have nothing. And Milton Friedman, who's kind of like, we study a little bit about Adam Smith and the invisible hand. The person who's kind of took over kind of modern day Adam Smith, even though he passed recently, was Milton Friedman. And this is his quote on the purpose of business. Sometimes you get these economists and you're going to think that they're just all about, the bottom line and making money and just kind of free market and just don't let the government get in the way and just keep that cash register ringing kind of a thing. But Milton Friedman on the purpose of business. The purpose of business is to make as much money as possible while conforming to the basic rules of society, both those embodied in the law and those embodied in ethical custom. So make as much money as you can, as long as it's legal, and as long as you're you're not taking advantage of people, places, or things. So that's kind of the last slide. That might be the last slide. It is. All right. The chapter 5 quiz should be up, and chapter 6 will be coming up next. Have a good day.